This is the version of the Super Soul Sunday. I woke up today and I said, okay, I feel the impulse to share the huge epiphanies and insights of the last, I would say, 2 months, when I was asked by Spirit and by life to do some of the deepest shadow work of my life, and really integrating whatever parts of my soul, of my psyche that have been rejected, disowned, and pushed aside at different phases of my life. So I'll share with you my discoveries. I'll share with you what my mistakes have taught me. And there is no such a thing as a mistake. That's the premise that I'd like to open this live stream. And then just to have a conversation with you of my discoveries on that topic. And the way I keep seeing and keep realizing there is only grace. But we experience this divine frequency of grace the most intensely in the moments where we feel like we're falling. So I have this saying, this is the card by Byron Katie, and it's a flower of life that represents the underlying symmetry and harmony of life, and the underlying beauty, how everything is connects, and everything has a divine sacred order. There is no random events, there is no random coincidences, right? The more our heart awakens and we begin to see this life as magical experience, the more we see the underlying thread that connects us all. So there is a reason why you feel called to tune in to this conversation right now. And there is a reason why I feel guided to share right now, not yesterday, not 2 days ago, not 5 days later, but right now. It's a sacred, holy encounter where my consciousness meets your consciousness, and we share this very, very intimate moment of exploring life lessons. So that's what I'd like to start. Fernanda says, from Switzerland. Okay, all right, Switzerland. I love it. Thank you so much for being here. Yes, right now. Hi, Carmen. Welcome, darling. So there is no mistake. I'd like to start with this and just share with you, my experience of grace. Hi, Kim. Hi, Eva. Welcome, darlings. So I start connecting with the spirit of grace in a very conscious way, in a very intimate way, probably around 4 years ago. And, I remember feeling that extra, blessing and support and kind of like divine wings that catch you when things fall apart in your life, or you're going through intense chapter. Maybe it's a depression, maybe it's a dark night of the soul, right? My first experience of grace was actually during my first dark night of the soul, where, the moment I stopped fighting the experience of being lost on the path, feeling disoriented, maybe feeling not supported, the moment I stopped fighting that experience, but actually opened up to it and almost asking life to take me. I say, life, take me as I am and lead me where you want me to go, because you do anyway, right? There was this moment of sweet surrender. And that was my first experience of this angelic presence filling the room that I was in. And that was the spirit of grace, a very conscious experience of this exquisite vibration that can be felt through the energy of your hearts. And then you will feel this, your life begins to open and begins to go into a new direction with more ease. So, I began to track those experiences where I felt grace in the most intimate and profound ways. And it usually was when I was in the deepest void, death and rebirth cycle, some kind of confusion, some kind of intense experience, right? And I got to experience the intimacy of grace, how it always catches us, always guides us, right? And then, darlings, I began to experience grace on my leadership path, and the grace of working with people, and the grace of, making choices or making decisions that were maybe not of the highest expression of self, right? And experiencing grace catching me there too. And when I talk about the shadow work and integration of these parts of ourselves that may be not so easy to look at, I think in terms of, how we see this image of a yin and yang, the yin and yang, the Asian Taoist symbol that actually is a symbol of wholeness. So whether you've seen it or not, I'll describe it in my own words. But yin and yang, it's two circles. It's a one circle that has one side light and one side dark, right? And it's the dance between these polarities that create creative tension for the birth of anything new, for the growth, for the evolution of consciousness. So I'll pause here for a minute. And in order for this growth to happen, what I'm realizing is it takes a lot of courage to look inside ourselves into the aspects that feel dark, that feel buried in unconscious, that maybe we don't want to welcome that easy, right? And it's quite more pleasant to look at the light side, right? And to these parts of ourselves that are more developed, more conscious, more embodied, right? But what I'm discovering is it's actually welcoming all parts of ourselves into this beautiful field of acceptance and appreciation. Acceptance and appreciation. And this is the curriculum that I am most excited to participate, because there is this next level of depth, a next level of aliveness that comes through where we welcome all parts of ourselves. Hi, darlings. Good to see you, right? So I remember I did a live stream, I think it was like 3 days ago or 4 days ago, sometime last week, where a person on the live stream left a comment and she says, Katerina, you only show us beauty. I want to see your darkness. I want to see, is there an evil in you? And, I took that comment and I mentally said, thank you for this comment, because this person gave me a very rich topic for a conversation. And I'm grateful for that comment, darlings, because I have an opportunity to share with you my perspective. I don't really think in terms of good and evil. I'll just start there. I think in terms of dark and light and the creative tension between those energies, right? Just how when the night comes and we have the dark of the night, we're not going to call the dark of the night evil. We're going to call it dark of the night. It's whatever our conscious self rejects and hides in the shadow has the capacity to become or to be experienced as evil, right? And it's much easier to label something as evil and kind of push it aside and maybe live even in fear of that, right, darlings? So, what if there is simply yin and yang? There is this dark and the light, and it's a creative tension between the two that is required for our growth, for us to master our lessons, for us to become, to become fully, to allow the full flowering of us as human beings. And I will share with you, it has not been easy for me to be human. I would say for the first 20, 30 years of my life, I resisted being on this planet. And I wonder if there's anybody in my community that can connect with that. I attract a lot of star seeds, a lot of beings who are very mystical in their nature. And it's, some people call them old souls. But when we have an intimate moment of sharing and they open up to me, there is often this thread, and they say, it's been very difficult for me to live in a human body. It's been very difficult for me to remember my divine nature and to notice these lower aspects of myself pop up when I least expect it. Right, darlings? And I want to tell you, I experienced this too. The last thing I ever want is for anybody to see me as this perfect spiritual teacher who has no flaws. I am a woman on her evolution journey, just like you and I. I simply choose to make my journey public. And when I make my journey public, there will be opportunities and there will be experiences where I will make mistakes publicly. I will say things that I will regret later. I will scratch my head after a live stream and say, oh my goodness, I feel huge vulnerability hangover right now. I wish I expressed it better. Somebody will take it apart and misinterpret what I said. And what if it's going to get all of that comes through my mind on a regular basis. And, when I gave my life in service to spirit, I gave my entire experience to service to spirit. So in a few moments, I'll share with you my recent encounter with my own shadow and all the shame that came with it, and how I worked through it and sat in it and came out of it with a deeper sense of acceptance of humanity and the deeper sense of, this experience of, whoa, thank you, this showed up. Am I able to witness you? Am I able to love you? Am I able to accept you? So Bobby says they want to see you on the road rage. I was sharing on Instagram, loves, that there's moments where I lose patience when somebody drives in front of me. And it's like, it's pretty calm. You will never see me like flipping somebody or like yelling in my car, but it's happening within me. So even if all of this composed, but it's happening within me, I gotta own it, right? But this is the experience, love. This is the shadow integration. The other day I went to a grocery store and I had a very, very low frequency attitude. And in the past, my past experience would to deny this low frequency attitude, pretend it's not there, and secretly shamed inside. I went to the grocery store and there was a moment of disconnection within me. And I got so frustrated, with the rules and bring the grocery bag, don't bring the grocery bag, the masks are still there in the grocery store, and it pushes my edges. And there was a moment where I didn't stay centered or composed. I actually connected with, this low frequency attitude within me. And I came back home and I felt remorse. And you know what I do in that moment? I chant a mantra: new breath, new choice, new breath, new choice, new breath, new choice. Perfection is not required. There's this beautiful walk that sometimes I will walk into the store and I will have a mask on and I will just blast every person there with the violet flame of unconditional love and blessings. And that's a good moment, right? That's like beautiful moment. And there will be a moment where I walk into the store and I have a story running in my head, how this is ridiculous, how this is insane. And I am like, I have huge resistance in the moment. So the question is, what is the process of accepting each moment that we are moving through? The old method for me was to shame myself for the low frequency experience, to reject the part of my being as, wow, this is unspiritual, this is really not evolved. And right, Gracia says she can relate. Yeah, so that's the old method: shame, reject, and numb. Shame, reject, numb. Shame, reject, numb. The new approach that I often stumble through, it's not a perfect process. I often stumble through this approach. Notice the low frequency experience within myself. Feel it. Feel it. Ask myself a question: what needs to be witnessed right now? What aspect of my psyche is frightened, overwhelmed, and feeling unsafe? Because that's the aspect of my psyche that is acting out through a low frequency attitude. Right, darlings? So that's a huge work that I've been doing the last, how many 6 months we've been in this experience, right? Aaron says internet is so not spiritual. Right, Aaron? Yeah. And what is spirituality? What is spirituality? Let's go there. Is it only light and love? Is it only the good? Is it only the positive? Or spirituality is life infused with spirit, and it's bringing spirit to every part of our experience, remembering ourselves as spirit, experiencing a very temporary existence in a human body that has limitations. That's the divine paradox, my loves. Limitless spirit learning to express itself through a limited body. That's a mind fuck, excuse my French, right? But that's the paradox and the creative tension between your divinity, your inner wholeness, your perfection, and these lower aspects of yourself that come out when you least expect it. Did you lose your divinity when you lose your cool and your center and your ego come out, your vanity came out, your judgments came out? Did you stop being divine? Or is it a moment of grace? The only way we can experience humility is when we lose it. I can tell you how many times, my loves, life would humble my butt to teach me what humility really, really feels at the core. So when this person asked me in the live stream, Katerina, talk about your shadow. We don't see it enough. I said, thank you for the invitation, because it's time. Because it's time, and a shadow is a very rich potential. It's like a raw power that is ready to be alchemized through acceptance. The only way we can start molding the light of our shadow is through acceptance, through being willing to look at it. And it's not easy, my loves. It's rough, it's tough. It's like sometimes when I look at some aspects of my shadow, I just want to look away. I'm like, really, Katerina? What? Well, look at that judging mind. But I'm here to normalize this experience for all of us, darlings. There is this aspect of a bunch of characters that live in our psyche. And the process of awakening, how I understand it, is welcoming these characters out of the shadows of our mind and asking them, what needs to be seen here? What is your message? So there were years that I struggled with intense judgment. I would walk on the street and my mind would just judge everything it saw. Right? And then the judgment goes straight together with the shame. So you notice your mind judging, and then the shame is right here, right? And you're like trapped between those things. And there is no breath, and there is no presence. There is only life right here. So what happens as a result, everything is numb. Everything is numb. So my loves, let's go deeper. The shadow conversation, it's all about return to the unity. It's all about looking at division within. Looking at division within and walking towards unity by welcoming it all. So the last time I experienced a deep sense of shame, you're ready for this, right? Was completely unexpected for me. That's when the grace is just around the corner. This was a huge lesson of humility for me. Huge lesson of humility. So feeling the butterflies even talking about this. But there's so much gold in this experience. Because a few weeks ago, I did a live stream talking about my experience with the plant medicine, with ayahuasca. And some of you have been on that live stream. And the plant medicine work is literally the most sacred conversation in my life. That's why I rarely talk about it publicly, right? I don't ever convince anybody to walk that path. I don't recruit volunteers to that path. Do none of that, because it's such a sacred experience of my life. You speak about it with reverence. Except this one time where my shadow came out of the corner and I heard myself speaking about the plants with not as much reverence, but with a lot of personal ego. And that, my loves, was very, very difficult to experience. I went into the spiral of shame. I couldn't sleep. And what happened was, when the vanity comes, and vanity is leading with your self-importance. And I remember getting on that live stream, and it was turbulence in the collective. And my intention was to give people comfort and say, death is just a door to a different reality. And this is what plants taught me. And this is, what I've learned on sitting many ceremonies. So there is no need to fear death or disease, because the spiritual world, the invisible world, is what's actually informing this physical world. Well, that was an intention. And what came out was this. What came out was my ego leading with, look at me, I've sat in hundreds of ceremonies, and this is what I have learned. The vanity of that angle was incredibly difficult for me to see. The vanity is all about self-importance. And some part of my psyche felt inadequate and insecure, that I was looking for a deeper acceptance, approval from my community by using the number of ceremonies that I set as a leading topic of the conversation. This was very, very hard for me to experience. And the grace of that, darlings, is sitting in that discomfort, watching as a witness. Wow, look at the ego. Look at this desire for approval. And look at this experience that happened in the public eye, in front of everybody. And I'm sharing this, darlings, because a lot of times I would say there is a fear of stepping in leadership or being in visibility or sharing yourself, because there is a fear of making a mistake. And when you are in leadership and in the public eye, whatever mistake you make it in a public eye. And I'm here to share with you, what if there is grace in that too? What if there is a sacred teaching in every experience? Because that experience of that live stream taught me so much. You know, for some people, it can feel very subtle. For me, it was huge. For me, it was huge. It's the intention of what I was leading the conversation with. And when I realized ego got trapped in that, the purity of the message was lost. When vanity comes, wisdom leaves. So I have a tattoo on my arm, and it says wisdom. I don't know if you can see it. I tattooed it on my left arm as a reminder to be aware and to be present for any traces of vanity. Vanity is not the desire for not artificial, but superficial things and power. That's just one layer of vanity. True vanity is attachment to self-importance. True vanity is deep fear of vulnerability. True vanity is fear that if I am vulnerable and I let you see my shadow, I will lose my power. And that is the gift of that experience, because I got to see, this is how it feels. This is how it feels when the purity of intention is lost, because the shadow came out. And it was such a need to be seen by you as capable, wise, maybe adequate, whatever the story is. So, you know, I sat and I remember I couldn't sleep all night, and I journaled about it, and I just really looked at that experience. I looked at that experience, and I think the deeper epiphany from that was, how do you return from judging yourself, from shaming yourself, to how do you turn around towards yourself with clear seeing, unconditional friendliness, and compassion? And this is the core essence of living as undefended self. I have a book, I always share with you books that really, really moved me. There is a book that came to my life from my friend Christina, and it's called The Undefended Self. And it's all about how do we embrace the dark, unconscious aspects that have been buried within us through trauma, rejection. Maybe we were told as children to only be good. How many times have you heard when you were little, be good, be good, be good? And any kind of a human experience of not being good have not been welcomed, have not been encouraged, have not been told that it's okay to experience those feelings. So from the childhood, we begin to value only the good, and that part of ourself, like I started this live stream with the yin and yang, right? The shadow and the light. The shadow goes more and more and more unconscious because, there's a deeper fear of revealing yourself in your full range. So true intimacy is willingness to reveal yourself in all of your range. I haven't mastered this, but this is my curriculum to continue to reveal this full range of human experience. And, when things like this happen and you share something maybe on a live stream or in a conversation or something, and you notice the energy that it came through, I'm here to share with you how I work with it. And this principle of unconditional friendliness comes from another body of work that I've been doing called radical acceptance. Darlings, when I came across Ram Dass teachings. So I grew up in Soviet Russia, if some of you don't know. And most of the spiritual teachers that were super, super well known in America, we've never heard of because we lived behind the iron wall. So we were the country starved of spiritual teachings, of spirituality. I grew up during the communism, where people were afraid to speak about anything that is not mainstream. So when I moved to US, I began to find these teachers like Wayne Dyer and Carolyn Mice. And Ram Dass came into my life this year, in the beginning of this year. And listening to Ram Dass teachings and, how he talks about instead of having a conversation of how do we love ourselves, what if we move to a conversation of how do we accept ourselves? And Ram Dass gave me so much inspiration because, he spent decades in this intense desire to transcend his human self. He sat with the caves, he sat in Himalayas, he was, at the foot of a real spiritual being, awakened master, his guru. And when you listen to Ram Dass teaching, he talks about his deepest struggle. He's like, I would sit in meditation and I would transcend my human self and I would be filled with bliss and ecstasy. And then I go to the marketplace to buy some milk and somebody steps on my toe and the dragon comes out of me. And this holy, sacred Ram Dass is gone. And there's this other version of me, other version of Ram Dass that is angry, that is judgmental, that is pity. When you listen to his talks, he talk about the journey of then realizing that it's not about transcending yourself, it's about merging with yourself and accepting yourself just as you are. How can we ever embrace our humanity if we're not willing to talk about moments like this? That's the question that I ask myself, and I've been asking myself. So I commit to having more conversations about the shadow with you, and to see the shadow through the eyes of unconditional friendliness. Because when we embrace the shadow, darlings, the miracles happen. We become more alive. We become more alive. The only way we can unthaw the numbness within is by directing the unconditional love, unconditional witnessing. And it can start with, the example that I shared with you when you go to a grocery store and you on your high frequency wave and you send everybody love and you feel really good about yourself in the moment. And then there's going to be another day, inevitably, when you're on the low frequency day and you got to go buy some oat milk, almond milk, and you feel an attitude within you. Like, low frequency attitude. And you want everybody to know that. Right? What happened to your divinity in that moment? What if I dare to suggest that in those moments, you are the closest to grace? You're the closest to grace, to that unconditional blanket of energetic love that hovers above you. When you open your heart to your own heart edges within, they begin to melt. And you begin to experience this beautiful dance of the variety of these frequencies within you, the whole musical frequency within you. We can never heal what we're not willing to feel. By feeling our anger, our sadness, our resistance, our ego, our shadow, our vanity, by looking at that and saying, whoa, there is a reason why these aspects of me are here. What is their message? What is their message? Yes. I have a quote for you. The woman who wrote Undefended Self, which I feel the next year when I choose a word for 2021, every year I choose a word as a guiding theme. I feel I'm going to choose the word undefended self. And undefended self is this choice with every breath to be intimate with everything that's happening within you. Everything that's happening within you. And here's the quote from a woman that channeled this book. If you don't pretend to be more than you are, you will dare to be all that you are. If you don't pretend to be more than you are, you will dare to be all that you are. So, I spent decades living frozen inside. I learned to hide from a very early age. As a little girl, I grew up with a lot of turbulent emotions, violence, screaming, drinking binges. And to feel anything was incredibly unsafe. So, as early as I remember, probably maybe 8-year-old, I learned to put these energetic shields around every part of my inner being. And these shields don't come off in one experience of awakening. It's a gradual softening, it's a gradual witnessing of all the parts of yourself and welcoming them back like a loving mother would welcome a child. And this is the process, my loves, I don't ever want anybody to see me as a perfect being who knows all the answers. I'm a woman on my own evolutionary journey. I simply choose to make my journey public. And with that comes its special beauty, its special nakedness, its special vulnerability, and its special strength. Because when you have nothing to hide and nothing to prove, you can be all that you are. And in that lays grace, my loves, in that lays grace. There is no mistake. Byron Katie, wisdom. And every time I fall and my mind wants to tell me a story that it's the biggest failure, biggest mistake of my life, I remember I am the closest to grace. The grace catches me and says, this is the part of your curriculum. This is the part of exquisite opening. Welcome that. Welcome that. Welcome that. I'm learning to understand ego in a new way. Wayne Dyer said, ego is edging God out. Right? Edging goddess out. The mystery of the dark, the mystery of our edges. What if ego is here to help us realize the unconditional acceptance of grace? Each time we meet and embrace a hidden part of ourselves, something that was rejected in childhood as unacceptable or bad, we create more inner unity. We become more alive by awakening from our numbness and self-rejection. It feels so good to be with you in this communion. You know, I know there's somebody who's listening in my community who is holding himself or herself back from visibility, from leadership, from service, because of the fear of making a mistake in a public eye. I'm here to tell you it's already been done, and you will experience grace every time you fall. You know that I have called my true allies Marcy Locke and Yvonne de la Flor, and I have many other allies, but those two were my first feminine allies who came into my life. You know, they showed up when I was in one of my deepest voids, where my business was going through death and rebirth, and Spirit was asking me to let go of particular structures in my business that were very, very comfortable, cozy, and secure for me. And Spirit said, you learned that lesson, time to innovate. And innovation means you got to let go of everything you know and step into the vulnerability of new. And in that void, I've met my allies in the place of emptiness and the place of humility. I think if I was on a high horse, I probably wouldn't be able to recognize them or to hear them or to even see them. So every time I find myself in the valley, I find the most beautiful flowers in the valley. The most beautiful flowers of exquisite grace. So if you're carrying something that is difficult for you to accept, and trust me, I have a lot of stories to tell you about that. I hope my share encouraged you to see only beauty in your entire journey, and in your human mess lays the masterpiece. And listen to Ram Dass. I just love his teaching so much. You know, his shares gave me so much courage and so much understanding what it truly means to be on the path of service and sharing and revealing yourself, revealing aspects of yourself that are not that maybe marketable. Right? It was not a very marketable moment. You do not put this on the landing page, but maybe in the future. Right? But it's acceptance of the full range. And since, you know, darlings, I love your comments. I see all of them. I see your comments here. Thank you so much. You know, the shadow work can be so beautiful. Right, darlings? They're so beautiful. When Richard Rudd from the Gene Keys teaches us, every shadow contains the gift, every shadow contains the gift, every shadow contains the gift. You know, first I was receiving it on a level of intellect. What a beautiful poetic expression. Then I began to feel it. Then I began to step into that experience one moment at a time. And when you're in the shadow, It feels like a heavy cloak, constriction, right? Confusion, darkness, and turning towards it as a sacred assignment. And acceptance is the path, right? And sometimes I go straight into the shadow work, like I march into it. I understand what's happening. I feel the signs. I see the signs. And sometimes I feel like spirit is dragging me into the shadow work. And I'm like, no, we just did this last week. Right, loves? I was like, we just had this curriculum last week. I'm back in it again. Okay, there's another layer. And but you see, my loves, I can find humor in that. You know, when you can find humor around the shame or around self-judgment, and you begin to realize that every shadow integration work that you do for yourself, for your ancestral line, and for collective. So I'd love to do a whole different live stream about sacred wound. You know, when we incarnate, we receive a wound of separation from spirit, right? From the source. And it's all by design. It's all by the grand design. But we feel this divine ache, you know, as early as right after 7 years old, we begin to feel a divine ache, like something is missing, that something is not all right with the world. And that's actually as if we feel our sacred wound. And it's the wound that guides us home. And where's home? Well, home is when you remember who you are, when I remember who I am. I'm a divine paradox. You are divine paradox. You are spirit experiencing itself in a human body that comes with shadows, that comes with ego, that comes with vanity, that comes with anger, that comes with fear. So if we don't want to ever experience any of those experiences, we got to leave the body. If we want to live in the body, the whole shebang comes with it. The whole enchilada comes with it. And awakening is that journey of acceptance. Whoa, the juice is in the shadow. Whoa, this is my sacred curriculum. And when I do this work, and when you do this work, we contribute to the healing of the humanity. We contribute to the healing of the whole. And that's when we begin to see exquisite beauty in our ordinary life. Our ordinary life becomes magical. You know? You're like, I love you, darlings. Good to see you. Yes, good to see you, my loves. Good to see you. Your ordinary lives becomes magical. And the conversations like this bring compassion, right? So there's an amazing book called Radical Acceptance. I had that book probably for 5 years on my bookshelf. And this last time, she's like, she can't hear me. Okay, I'm going to speak louder. There's an amazing book called Radical Acceptance. And the woman who wrote the book is really, really incredible psychotherapist. She has a PhD. So she's an incredibly smart, wise, and deeply embodied teacher. And she says that in order to heal the wound of unworthiness that is so prevailing in the Western world, because in our collective narrative, we have this talk about original sin. That narrative breeds the wound of unworthiness. We come into the world and we get this narrative that something is bad with us, that we did something bad. In order to heal that, she calls it a trance of unworthiness. We gotta open up our wings. And this is the metaphor in the image that I'll share with you, darlings, that she shares in the book. There's two wings. First is a clear seeing, another way to say it, mindfulness. The second wing is compassion. So, two wings required for us to rise above the trance of unworthiness, to see clearly who we really are. Clear seeing is when you can have a witness consciousness. So when I notice my ego showed up on the live stream, I can, this is the first step, is to see it, right? To see it. Whoa, what is here to be witnessed? What is here to be loved? What is here to be acknowledged? That's the clear seeing, mindfulness. The second is compassion. And compassion, my loves, Queen Yen, the goddess of compassion. I imagine compassion is the golden liquid love that you would pour if you had a child covered in wounds in front of you. You're walking on the street, you see a child covered in bruises, blood, and wounds. Any human being would stop and start helping the child, wouldn't judge the child. Look at all these wounds, right? It would start pouring the love and tenderness to the child. So this is the process that we get to direct for ourselves. The ego aspect is an aspect of disowned part, maybe child self, maybe a teenage self, all these characters within us, right, that felt inadequate, insecure, unsafe. And compassion, how I imagine it, is to visualize, this medicine, the golden liquid unconditional love medicine that you would give everybody else. But the real work is turn it around towards yourself, especially in the moment where you don't feel like you deserve it. How can we ever learn compassion if we never fall? How can we ever learn humility if we never experience arrogance? How can we ever experience grace if we never make a mistake? That's the journey. So every time you find yourself falling, remember you're falling into grace. And grace will always catch you, my love, just how it always catches me. And, it feels so good to have this conversation with you, to reveal such intimate experience. And I feel your soul resonance. If you're watching, I feel it on the level of the heart. And I'd like to conclude with this. What if you have never made a mistake in your life? You were gathering experience. You were gathering wisdom. And you were learning how to occupy this very interesting vehicle called the human body. What if this entire time until this moment, you have been learning how to dance with grace? Thank you. I love you. Hold your inner child with more tenderness. And then you have your inner teenager, and then you have your infant within you, and then you have a self-critical adult. There are all these aspects of you. What if they're all welcomed today? What if you are beautiful, not because you're perfect, but precisely because you are imperfectly perfect? New breath, new choice. Until I see you next in this series of live streams called Imperfect Human Moments. I love you. I see you. You are another version of me. I am another version of me, of you, as in Mayan tradition they say. And I love it so much. Thank you for your courageous work. Thank you for being willing to look at the places that are uncomfortable. And thank you for welcoming yourself home into the chambers of your heart.